this is someone who I know personally who had a near-death experience. He actually died, came back, and he had events that he couldn't have known, right? So Paulo had shared those personally with us. I think he talked about it in different forums before, but I kind of wanted to bring his experience in front of our audience because
I suddenly wake up in another room. Now, it's also a hospital room, the hospital bed, but it's pitch black. I could see the machines, I could see the lights, I could see the IVs, I could see all the stuff. I'm actually still connected. And in front of me is three big glass panels that's looking into the hospital, which is also all pitch black still. Aside from emergency lights and all that kind of stuff, right? And there's no fear or worry at all. You're kind of just
numb, basically, numb to any emotions.
Yeah, you just kind of you're not scared. You're kind of like, okay. Yeah. And I remember saying to myself, okay, I think I'm dying now. And the strangest things would start to happen at that point. I remember
welcome guys to one more podcast yet with Micronetbd. Today we have one special guest with us. He is our referral partner. He is with us for a long time. There is a very backstory behind that. But before going there, let me introduce you guys with Paulo. Hey, Paulo.
How's it going, guys?
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, why not? Hi, my name is Paulos Santos. I run a company called Sona Connect. We're a business development lead generation firm focused around technology, AI, and those other kinds of cool keywords that everybody likes to hear. We've known George for 2019, I guess, when we had this first event where we ran into each other. I don't remember much of it. There's a good chance I was inebriated, just to be honest with you guys. But it was a good night. Met a lot of good people, and was able to get the connection with George going. So it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. I guess whoever is watching our Micronetbd podcast, you guys already know George, but I would like to introduce George. Once again, George is the CEO of Micronetbd. And George, if you want to take the mic and introduce yourself once again for the new audience.
Sure. So I'm George, CEO and founder of Micronetbd. We are a Salesforce and DocuSign and Litify implementation partner, and we also have apps in the App Exchange, and we have been in business since 2012.
Awesome. How did you meet Paulo, George, if you don't mind me asking you?
Sure. So we did a joint event with Salesforce in Red Bank to bring in our common customers and prospects. And in that event, Paulo was also invited. And that's when we met Paulo. And so that's where the relationship started. That was pre-COVID. And I think that was towards the end of maybe 2018.
2019, yeah.
2019, right? And then, so that's when it started.
Awesome. Paulo, if I tell you, just from back then when you met George, you saw a lot of changes in George himself, also inside the company because you were there for a long time. So what are the changes that you saw, and what are the changes that actually you think that can be motivational for any other newcomer starters who can actually learn from it?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you got to change with the times, right? If you're a tech consulting firm, whether you're doing Salesforce, Oracle, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Technology changes faster than anything else. But what changes faster than technology is humans and business overall. So if you're not modifying your business to adapt to the world and the changes happening, you're pretty much dead in the water. And for a tech firm, you have to move faster than every other firm. Every company, every industry expects technology to be fast-moving, quick, ever-changing, and everything else. So if you're not ever-changing and modifying how you're doing business, you might as well just give up now because you're not going anywhere. Micronet was able to do that, not just with their beautiful new office and everything else, but when you're looking at some of how these companies are evolving, and you could take away, let's put Salesforce aside, right? Companies have gone from 2019, when I first met George, through a world of insane COVID, through COVID, post-COVID, to whatever the hell we're in now, hybrid work environments, stay-at-home stuff going on, new technologies emerging, ChatGPT, AI, all around it. None of that has to do with Salesforce. None of it has to do with Salesforce at all.
Right.
But what you guys are doing is relevant because in order for those things to adapt and to be modifiable and to work within a new business environment, they need tools, and that's what you guys are providing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you guys have really been able to adapt to is the changes in the business world and the world itself, not just in the technology world. No offense to Salesforce, no one gives a crap about, edition 12.1.2.3 and 12.2.1.4. There is no differences for 99% of the users of these systems, right? But if you could point out how one little change in the system can improve a company's business, their bottom line, moving them from red to black and moving their general ledger and the stuff people really care about their companies. How are we going to retain more employees? How are we going to attract more employees? And you guys provide a tool to be able to do that. That's how Micronet's really been able to keep up with the times and adapt to the world around them.
Awesome. If I ask you, George, how did you keep up with this high-paced business environment? Like, in any technical fields nowadays, like Paulo mentioned, it's very, very high-paced. You have to always learn, adapt fast, and implement faster. So how did you keep up with that, and what inspired you to
Sure.
ahead?
So we most of the Micronet team members, including myself, we've always been very technology oriented, and not only technology oriented. I managed sales and marketing operations in multi-billion-dollar companies, and so had a solid understanding on the business side. So a lot of times when we were managing vendors, right, it was hard to work with vendors who would understand the business and the technology, right? So we always try to kind of be in upfront with both sides, right? Like we understood business, but we understood technology, so we wanted to always stay on top of it. I personally always have been fascinated by AI and all the latest advancements. So we started, playing with, API integrations with AI tools, like just for fun, right? So those things we enjoy doing, and also whenever we see there's a gap in terms of maybe business understanding for a certain vertical, right? That's when players like Paulo and others that we partner with, we always try to see, okay, where do we have a gap, right? We bring those individuals in to fulfill those gaps and stay on top of it. And so during the COVID, we were able to help many companies stay on, quickly transition from a totally 100% office space to a remote work environment for many companies, and allow those companies survive COVID, right? And so, this is what we like doing. We're problem solvers, right? We don't think of ourselves as a Salesforce guys or AI guys or none of that. We are problem solvers, right? This is what we do. Problem solving is what anyone who goes to School of Engineering, right? When I went to Pitt School of Engineering, one of the first things that we were taught is you learn to be a problem solver. Whatever technology you're being taught right now, by the time you graduate, it will be irrelevant, right? But what you get out of it is, how do you solve a problem, right? That's what we do as a business.
Awesome. So let's get into more about Paulo. Since this episode we have Paulo here, there's a special reason, because Paulo is one of our one of the few first referral partners. Paulo is one of them, right?
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we wanted to have this episode today is during different episodes we talk about business all the time, and one of the stories that I know personally is I knew Paulo before COVID, and he actually had COVID and was in the coma, right?
Wow.
And he medically died, and so came back, right? And I personally know stories from Paulo, and these things, even us in the business world, like at the end of the day, we're all humans, right?
Right.
We think about, okay, we're in this world, we want to make a difference, help other people, make things better. But at the end of the day, there's an expiration date for all of us, right? So as a conscious human being, and there's so much advancements in science now, especially in quantum mechanics, that's getting very close to where we're beginning to understand what happens to consciousness afterwards, right?
Right.
So this is someone who I know personally who had a near-death experience. He actually died, came back, and he had events that he couldn't have known, right? So Paulo had shared those personally with us. I think he talked about it in different forums before, but I kind of wanted to bring his experience in front of our audience, because this is someone who works with us on a business side on a day-to-day basis. We know him before and after, so it would be fascinating hearing from someone who we already know versus
Awesome.
some random guy out there that you hear, near-death experience.
That's going to be a very interesting topic to actually dig in.
I'll
Yeah,
just be a
Paulo.
random guide to your guest, so it's fine. It'll be interesting.
Awesome, Paul. If you like, just tell me about your experience. Like, how did you feel? Like, what happened? I didn't know that. In fact, you were in coma, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's a whole thing. Oh gosh, I can't start off with so broad of a question. Let me backtrack. So this was March 5th, or March 6th, 2020. I was down in DC, had a meeting down there, and then the next day I was up on a train to New York, coming back home. Get a text message on my phone that I'm the last train out of DC because they're shutting down all travels, right? Never happened before.
Right.
Since 9/11. No one knows what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm literally I'm in my seat on the Acela, and I'm taking Purell, rubbing it on my hands, and I'm rubbing it on the seat around me, like it's gonna do anything, right? But I'm semi-panicking.
That is the first day of lockdown, right?
I don't think it's technically locked down yet. I think they're
Just
slowly shutting down little things.
Got
People
it.
are kind of panicking. They hear there's a breakout in DC, so they shut the trains from DC to New York, and all that stuff. So people are just kind of trying to figure it out. So I remember just wiping the chair down, not knowing what the hell's going on. Get home, perfectly fine. 10 days later, March 17th, let me back up. March 15th, I'm in my basement. Thankfully, my wife is a nurse. She said, "Get your butt to the basement." She said, "You're quarantined." All this stuff is happening. 2 days later, I'm in the emergency room, and that was it, right?
Oh, wow.
I was in ER for about 3 days, and then on March 20th, stopped breathing completely.
So you got COVID, basically.
Got COVID.
Okay.
Got COVID. Got probably the worst of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I in those 3 days, a lot happens. So from a business standpoint, let me just kind of not go too far down the path here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
From a business standpoint, it's March 17th, March 18th, March 19th. I'm in the hospital. I'm laid out, and no exaggeration, every hour you hear the codes triggering that there's somebody that just died. So nurses are running, doctors are running down the hallway, they're putting masks on, they're running, and they're trying to get to that room next to you in time. And every hour, they're pulling out another person out of the room with a blanket over their head. And then you start getting real mortality questions in your brain, right? Like,
And you were conscious that time, right?
oh yeah,
You were seeing all these
still awake,
people are
still awake, still sick,
going out, all these dead
watching
bodies.
it all happen, and you're just like, okay, as a father, as a husband, as a just a human being, your mortality kicks in really fast.
Right.
Right? When we were younger, we all used to think we could jump off a building and survive it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You really realize really quickly you can't do certain things anymore.
Right.
Right? But then let's go back to the business side of it, right? Okay, God, I was 38 at the time. Did I do everything I wanted to do? Did I do everything right? Just did I accomplish anything in my life if I died right now? Kind of thing. Then you go back to your family, of course, and that's always heavy on your mind. And you realize how much more important that stuff is than the other business stuff you were talking about, right? But all of that was just heavy on your brain. You're constantly digesting all of that, to the point, by the way, that one, I actually called clients up to say goodbye and thank you. I called up people that have kind of been, people that have led me along the way, other people that have, been mentors to me, thank you, goodbye, kind of thing. And then I did the worst thing of all. I actually made goodbye videos to my family.
Oh, wow.
Right? Just imagine how hard that is. It's March 18th, 19th. You'd have no idea what's going on. The doctors at this point are completely lost.
Right.
Not to their fault. It's just to
Right.
you.
They don't know.
Right? So you're making goodbye videos. And I send it to my wife's cousin and say, just keep these. Don't show anybody in case something happens. Just lock them away. Okay. March 20th comes, and I'm FaceTiming with my wife. And in the middle of the FaceTime, all she sees is the ceiling because I dropped the phone and it's pointing upward, and I'm gone. Just out. I'm gone. Right? Now, you got to remember, middle of COVID, there's a lot of rules of how these nurses and doctors are going to approach you in this time. There's not more than one person allowed in the room with me at a time. And before they come in, they have to get all PPE
and
all
those
the
things.
masked up, gowns, everything, right? So, from what I was told, I was pretty much, my alarm went off, and for a few minutes, as they were come responding to the alarm, getting the masks on, getting all that stuff. It was a few minutes before they actually got to me. And at that point, I was brought back, and then they finally intubated me.
For a few minutes, you were clinically dead, basically.
I'm not sure exactly how long.
Like you like lost the
I
consciousness,
was gone,
basically.
but I was gone. Right, and then they finally got me back up, and then they intubated me, and then I'd wake up a few weeks later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the basis of how I got to that point. But I guess you guys want the fun stuff, right?
Yes.
You guys want the good stories.
Yes.
You guys want the cool stuff. All right,
Yes.
so let's back up. So the minute that happened, so let's go back to, I'm with my wife on FaceTime, and suddenly she's looking into the ceiling because the phone drops, and, you know, that's it. I suddenly wake up in another room. Now, it's also a hospital room, the hospital bed, but it's pitch black. I could see the machines, I could see the lights, I could see the IVs, I could see all the stuff. I'm actually still connected. And in front of me is three big glass panels that's looking into the hospital, which is also all pitch black still. Aside from emergency lights and all that kind of stuff, right? And there's no fear or worry at all. You're kind of just
numb, basically.
there.
Numb to any emotions.
Yeah, you just kind of you're not scared. You're kind of like, okay. And
Yeah.
I remember saying to myself, okay, I think I'm dying now. And the strangest things would start to happen at that point. I remember I closed my eyes, and you guys ever watched The Lion King?
Yes, yeah.
No, you're too young. Not that weird new Disney live action one. I'm talking about the old,
No,
old
not the old
cartoon
one.
one, just to be clear.
Not
So
the old one,
So
no.
there was these scenes in The Lion King where there were the sands of time start spinning and crap. And it was kind of like, imagine a whole wall of sand in front of you. So I would close my eyes, and then this whole wall of sand, pitch black sand would appear. And from the middle of it, it would start like a tornado effect. Slow spinning, and it was almost like a fluid sand, right? And then once in a while, a color would show up, one little speck. And the first color I remember popping up was this dark red, maroonish, burgundy type of color. And as it swirled into those black sands, it started multiplying to the point where it took over the entire thing and actually started forming an image. And the first image that it formed, I remember this very clearly, was a nurse standing in the back of a room wearing dark red scrubs, the exact same color. And there was another nurse standing next to her wearing red scrubs with a white cardigan. And they were basically resuscitating me in the room. There was another man behind me with a machine hooked up, and they were putting a tube down my throat. And I'm watching this happen in this space, kind of looking above my body as it's happening, right? But not like where they see in a movie where you're kind of like 5,000 feet in the air looking. I mean, I'm kind of in the room, right, face to face, nose to nose with myself. I can kind of move around a little bit, and I'm watching everything happening in this room. You're not scared. You're kind of just watching it happen.
Just watching.
Right. Meanwhile, this woman in the back in this dark red is like, and I don't know if she was doing it in her head or actually doing it, but she was screaming, crying, and praying at the same time. Right? Just literally like, please God, no, not him, not tonight kind of thing. And just kept on going with it. Right? But then suddenly, like the snap of a finger, I'm back in this weird hospital room again. This weird kind of, I'm going to call this home base, by the way, because I'll refer to a lot. In this weird random home base. So this scenario of this little black sands would happen like hundreds and hundreds of different times. Wow. And I would watch different scenarios happening. Sometimes I'd watch doctors at home talking about me. Sometimes I'd watch the doctors telling my wife that I had just died. I'd watch my funeral happen. All sorts of random stuff happens. I don't even know how long that went on
And you
for.
saw those things as a picture, basically as a video type of.
I was
vision.
present in the room.
And you were seeing all these things happening in front of you.
But I was in front of me, around me. I could move around. It wasn't like a TV screen. I was in the room, but I wasn't alive, obviously.
Okay, nobody could see you, but
Nobody
you were
could see
seeing
me.
all these
No,
things.
but I was watching all of it happen. Then I get back to this home base after so many iterations of these weird little things happening, and for a second, the lights turned back on. Every single light outside was on. There's people moving around, and it's just bright white. Like it's a hospital. Everything is lively, but it's not where I was before, right? It wasn't my original hospital where I went to. But I think what was really interesting was the change of feeling came on. Okay. And I knew something was different. I was not the same place anymore. A man walks in, about 35 to 40 years old. He had like reddish blonde hair. Yeah, comes right into the room and goes, Paul, I got something to tell you. It's like, you're dying, dude. I'm like, cool. All right, what's next? Just like that, right? Just like that. No fear. Just like, okay, what's next? Well, he goes, and that's where it gets a little bit, this where the fun really begins. So he goes to me, he goes, well, we got a gift for you. His exact words was, he's got a gift for you. And I would just assume that's some sort of higher being at that point, right? He's got a gift for you. And the gift goes, he's going to let you live and witness as much of your life as you want to live and witness until you're ready to move on. I had no idea what moving on went, but that all sounded great to me. So I said, okay, let's do it. Right? I said, all right, so what do you want to do? What do you want to know? In my head, this is years with this guy. And he let me travel. He let me ask him questions about anything and everything I wanted to ask him. He had no problem answering anything. And then he would let me watch my life happen in the most important moments. When I say my life, my family's life, right? My daughter, who was at the time that happened, was 8 years old. I would watch her get proposed to. I know the guy's name, which is really weird. I'm not going to say it here, by the way. I know where she got proposed to. I would watch her get married. My son, who was 3 at the time, I watched him walking down the aisle with his soon-to-be wife.
Wow.
Right? I would then watch my daughter give birth to her first child. And I would be there for moments of the kids' birthdays and all that kind of stuff, watch him have his love life and eventually die himself. So you put that into a timeline perspective, that could be a very long time. Right? But I was not ready to leave until I saw that they were going to be okay. Right? Just from a mental standpoint, as a father, as a husband, right? Like, our lives don't matter. Right? Am I right? George, you got kids, right?
Of course.
99% of this is we're doing all this for everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? We do everything for them. And quite frankly, if I knew, not thought, and not if I hoped, not if I knew I had $1 billion, none of that. If I knew that they were going to be okay, and to whatever your definition of okay is, I was okay as well. I was happy with that. Forget the money, right? Did you become a good person and did you have a happy life? Right?
Exactly.
That's all we really want for a family, right? I would rather my kids be good people than be rich jerks. Right. So all that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that all of life for them was good. And maybe it was just my own selfishness and ego. I was not ready to go until I watched my grandkids die because I wanted to make sure they were okay. Right? It took me that long to let go of my life. No. All that happens. And I'm back in this room. And this is where it gets a little crazy now, right? The man shows back up. My little angel friend, by the way. I refer to him as the angel guy, angel guide. He goes, all right, now I got something else to tell you, Paulo. You're going to hell.
Oh, wow.
All right? You're going to hell. All right. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's get this started, right? Let's get rolling here, right? Once again, still no fear. Still no fear. You're just...
Because in your mind, you already understood that maybe you were dead.
I'm dead. I mean, it was almost not inevitability. More of a, there's a process we have to follow.
You already accepted it.
Right? I mean, at that point, you got to remember, I've lived hundreds of years forward watching my own life.
Right.
From the day technically, quote unquote, had died, I had watched my family, been told I was dead. I watched my funeral. I watched my kids grow up and die, and my there's to me it's okay. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. What's next? Right. So, by the way, I'm skipping so much here because it's just we only have an hour and a half of recording time on. So
well, I'll interrupt you for a second. During that live review, have you seen anyone outside your family, like people that you work with, or like did you see us, for example? Just curious.
I saw whoever I wanted to see.
Okay.
And I needed to see. And let's just go back to that live review thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by the way, most people only ask this story for two reasons. One, because they're scared of their own mortality.
Right.
Or two, they're scared of other people's mortality around them, which is very fair for those reasons, right? You just want to know, right? But what I'll say is, you ever have a moment where somebody had passed away in your life, and you, God, I really wish name that person was here right now, or I really feel like he's looking down on us, right? That life review that I had, I felt like I was there
Right.
for my daughter getting married, even though I
Saw everything.
already gone. I felt like I was there in those moments.
Right. Okay.
Right? Did I see other people? Yeah, tons. Was it relevant? Maybe.
Like, have you ever walked into a moment you're like, okay, you know what? I have been to this moment before.
Oh, all the time. It's frightening.
Yeah?
All the time. All the time. Ever since it's happened nonstop. It happens all the time. But let me just preface that with, if I've walked into every single building in your complex, right? Let's say I spend the next year, and every single day I spend an hour in every building, in every single office, in every single door, right? Did I really accomplish any life-changing thing there? No. All I did was see more space,
Right.
Right.
right? I was able to view more areas, right? So when I say I've experienced this feeling before, I feel like I've done this before. I feel like this has happened before. You know, did I really see the future? No. But maybe I just experienced a lot more things,
Right.
right? So maybe I've experienced other emotions and experienced a similar office in some level.
Makes
Right.
sense. Yep.
So yeah, so let me jump back to the hell part, because this, I guess, really gruesome for a second. Here.
Right.
I'm not gonna be too gruesome, by the way. I want to keep it PG for the audience. So the guy goes, "You're going to hell now," and this whole thing about an explanation of how the heavens work and where God is, and you know how the afterlife works. He gives me this whole spiel about it, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Let's get going, right? So I'm back in my bed. Let's go. All right, we're gonna get, I'm sorry, but we'll see you soon. And he put me back in the bed, in my hospital bed. Now let me just give you a clarification on this room. This is in my head. This is a normal hospital bed that I'm in a normal hospital room. So it has regular hospital stuff in the room. Now for years, I'm gonna say years, that I've been in this room back and forth, experiencing these random things, there was this little brass plaque alongside the door in front of me. And the brass plaque was about, 4 inches, 2 inches high, give or take. And all it said at the time was, please keep the temperature of the room between 67 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. All it said.
Okay.
That little plaque. Please keep the temperature 67 to 72 degrees.
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Right. Fahrenheit. Right. Yeah.
Since you talked about hell, I thought it's Celsius.
No. No, they go kelvins in hell. It gets a lot hotter in kelvins. But you look at that little plaque. I looked at that little plaque for years. It was just kind of a piece of the room. Never thought of it. When the guy leaves the room, I literally look back and say, all right, when are we leaving? In my head. I don't go anywhere. Right? All I notice is the first thing on that little stupid plaque. All it changed to, instead of saying that whole temperature range situation, that little plaque, all it said was, where's God now? That's it. Just like that. A little while later, could have been hours, could have been days, that little plaque changed again. Wasn't all those hours in church a waste? Again, right? So imagine these little mocking statements.
Right.
And it could have been, I don't know how long it was, but it was just kept on rotating. And to me, that was one of the most torturous moments of it all, because it starts breaking down everything you ever wanted to believe in.
Right.
Right? Everything you ever believed in, this little stupid plaque could somehow destroy all of your belief, right? And it makes a ton of sense, because then you realize you're in literal hell right now.
Right.
Right? You're literally in hell right now, right? But that was how hell started for me. I don't want to get to the details about hell, but yeah.
Just maybe give just a little bit so the audience
Oh, gosh.
understand some of the stuff that I know, but
boy.
I know those would be more, wouldn't be a PG, but just high-level ideas so people
High level
can get an idea of
how-
what you saw.
How un-PG can I get?
You can
just,
get as PG as possible. Yeah,
yeah.
it's fine.
We can go
Our
for it.
audience are grown up, so
Let's go for it. Let's go for it.
Yeah,
I
let's go
screw
for
it.
it.
Let's
and
go for it.
if something that's
You can cut the
LinkedIn
sound
will
because
block, we'll just
yes. Our
beep
audience
it
is
out.
grown up. They can
we can
listen
get
to it.
we can get dark here. All right. So
Yeah.
so let's put this.
Yeah.
Remember when I was in this weird state of being able to go forward in time or whatever I was doing and watching different timelines happen, etc. I kind of had no rules as far as how long and where I went and when I went, everything else. A lot of hell, wherever I was constrained by limitations of time. Right? Suddenly time became an imprisonment tool against me. So let's get dark. Let's get real dark. All right?
Yeah.
I want you guys to think of a loved one close to you, right? So for me, it was my wife. And I'm not going to get to the full words, but let's go with this. Let's say today is a Wednesday. We're going to torture your wife next Sunday. So I want you to put into perspective what that means. We're going to show you, by the way, what that means. We're going to show you exactly what we're going to do to her and everything else. You know what the worst part about that was?
What?
Waiting till next Sunday.
Oh wow. Yeah.
The time constraints became an imprisonment tool. It became a torture methodology because you you can't do a damn thing about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what do you have to do but sit there and live out every second of that pain, knowing nothing can happen? There's
Right.
nothing you're going to do. You're not even in the same dimension anymore.
Right.
God knows where the hell I was, but there was absolutely zero you could do. George, if I told you this was going to happen to somebody you loved one, you're
Yeah.
jumping in your car right now. You're
Yeah.
either getting them out of here or running over somebody to make sure nothing happens. 2 seconds, right?
Yeah, true.
True.
Fly them out to a different country, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Today, as that was happening to me, when I was there, when it was happening to me, I knew for a fact there was nothing you're going to do about it.
Right.
And by the way, they show it to you at the end, and surprisingly, the showing was not nearly as bad as the time frame. So, when I talk about my hell experience, that's kind of some of the things. Yes, there was the physical tortures. There's not necessarily seas of fire and all that kind of things that you see in these things, but I think those are all metaphorically, what they would feel like, right? But the mental anguish was so much more frightening in every single way, right? But let me just preface, not preface, I guess we're in the middle of it now. Let me just say that whatever happened to me was a very personal situation, right? I cannot guarantee, I will not tell you that whatever happened to me will happen to you or anybody else, right? All I know is what I experienced, and I think that was my experience. It was a very, very honest experience of torture in the strangest ways possible, right? And
Most of the tortures you have got is surrounded by your family, basically. Like all the tortures, kind of like talking about your wife, your children, and your family, someone like near and dear to you, basically.
yeah, because that's the most torturous thing to me.
Right.
Right, so let me ask you a question. Are you scared of snakes?
I am. Yeah.
All right, so I love snakes. Right, I don't actually love snakes, but let's pretend I do.
You are
Right.
not scared of snakes.
Right, so let's say I'm not scared of snakes. In my hell, let's say I'm surrounded by 1 billion snakes. I wouldn't care.
You don't care.
You, on the other hand, may be part of your torture.
Oh yeah, I'll be done.
Right?
I'll be faint to drive away.
Right. That's what we're talking about here, right? So
Right.
your individual hell is so personal
Right.
because it could only be around the things that would hurt you the most. And when you become a father and you become a husband, the things that will hurt you the most is basically your family.
Yeah.
Right?
So you have
True.
gone through mostly the mental tortures than physical.
Well, I'm already dead. What's
you're
the
already
worst,
dead, yeah.
What's the worst that could happen physically, right? Now, there was, obviously all the stuff you could, terrible
But you
things
didn't
you
feel
could
any
miss.
pain though when
Oh,
you were
you felt
dying.
it.
You felt it.
Oh, when I was dying? When I was dying, no. In hell, you felt the pain. Yeah, you felt all
You
the
felt
pain.
the pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, mental torture. And
1,000 times more than physical. Yeah. Always.
Oh, yeah. But let me tell you a quick timeline. So there's a story. There's this random timeline I'll go through, right? And in this timeline, I was 38 years old when I went down, right? 2020, 38 years old. When I had this whole time, but in 28 years old, 38 years old. I married my wife in 2009. So I've been together for a little over 11 years at that time. right? And I have 2 kids already. All right. So let's go down this path. There is a scenario, right, where in one of these random timelines where I'm watching my life happen in different ways, and by the way, there's 1,000 different scenarios that happened, tons of them, where I would have this crazy, crazy love affair with another woman, right? And by the way, not just like a random, like, fling, like she was madly in love with me, I was madly in love with her, this whole thing, right? To the point where I would somehow she was also married, I would somehow get obsessed with her, visit her, and her husband would shoot me.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I would wake up days later because the cops had beaten me because I tried to resist arrest because I was originally going to shoot him first. Just think of how crazy this timeline is, this whole storyline is, right?
You lived out like different timelines
Oh,
of your
yeah.
life.
Timelines, different verses.
After timeline.
When you were living that timeline, did you know like this is a simulation that you
No.
were in?
No clue.
Really?
No clue. You were able to live it out as if it was insanely real.
So in one timeline, he's really close with his family. He really loves his
Right.
wife. In another timeline, he's cheating on his wife.
Right.
And
For
he's
years, by the
doing
way,
all the-
for 3 years.
For 3 years.
3 years.
So
We lived it all out, second by second.
Serious?
Second by second, right?
Wow.
And thinking about all the ways I can get away with it. And to the point where I ended up getting obsessed, went to go kill her husband, he shoots me first. I wake up in a hospital because the cops had attacked me. But let's get even worse than that.
By anyhow, did she resemble with anyone you know in present life?
I know the name of the person. I never met the
You
individual.
never met that person,
Right.
but you never saw that person as well.
No.
Nowhere.
No, never.
Okay.
Right? I know what she looks like. Don't know who or what this individual is. She was older than me, which is kind of weird, but okay.
What's her ethnicity, if you don't mind me asking?
She was Caucasian. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Just to just imagine it a little bit.
That's why I stopped hanging out with people that looked exactly like that, just to be clear. I'm hanging around you guys to be safe. So
Okay.
this timeline keeps going. This is how long let me explain how long this timeline goes. So a year later, let me back up. So I do this thing, I'm in the hospital. I wake up and in the hospital and on the door are divorce papers from my wife.
Oh, wow.
Right? Obviously, because I just
Obviously, yeah.
got shot over it, whatever else.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know how much longer it happens. A few weeks later, my daughter's prom is coming up, and she says, "Don't come.
Oh, wow.
Don't show up to the house. I don't want you to see me."
So would you think these are also sort of like an indirectly hell experience that
Oh yeah,
Mental
divine,
torture, yeah.
divine
Oh,
is
yeah.
giving
Yeah.
you?
all of the above. I mean, it's
Obviously.
giving, but it might not be. So let me explain why. So, but let me keep going with the story first. So, with the experience of that, so my wife sent me the papers. This happens, this and that. A few years later, my wife and I reconcile, and we remarry. And what's the first thing my dumbass does? I cheat on her again with the same woman.
Oh my
Oh, my
God.
God.
Okay? So, I'm with this woman. We're never actually become a couple or anything.
Right.
Did we re-divorce my wife, obviously, right? 25 years later. 25 years later.
25.
I'm in the hospital bed, still, this weird random room.
Mm-hmm.
And a postcard is in my hands. It is an invitation. And I remember this invitation so clearly in my head. We'd like to invite you to the back nine of our love. Please celebrate our 20th anniversary together. It's from the woman's ex-husband with his new wife. And he says, "Thank you for taking her away from me. It was the best decision I've ever done to find the real love of my life." And it was a joke. It was a mocking thing. And
Right.
they were living down in Florida, invited me to the specific golf course down in Florida. Never heard of the place, by the way.
Right.
I didn't even want to look it up, to be honest with you. But that's how long that timeline went.
Wow.
Right?
And
And by the way,
minding that that's only for a few minutes that you got unconscious for.
Oh, yeah. But every second of that was living it out. And now this is why I'm not sure if it was hell, but I don't think it was. I think this was an opportunity to do all the terrible things and wonderful things you wanted to do. All right, so let me go back to you. All right, little Tossin comes running down, 5-year-old you, and he's about to touch the stove. What do you say to him?
Like, don't touch it, or
And what's the first thing he's going to do?
touch it.
He's gonna touch it.
You got young kids.
Yes.
You tell him not to do something. The
Yeah,
first thing they're gonna do is
He's
go
gonna try
running
to
and
do
touch
it.
that damn
Yeah.
stove.
Touch
He's
it.
like,
Oh my God.
I told you. I told you. Why?
I can see that in his smile.
Right.
Yeah.
But why
Doing
did
that.
why did they touch the stove?
Curious, I guess.
Curious.
They're
man.
curious.
Yeah.
They want to know what's gonna happen. You
Right.
could tell them all day long what's gonna happen,
Right.
but they have to experience it.
They have to experience
Right?
it. Yeah.
You can go back to you ask any girl or any guy, go back to 14-year-old you. What were you thinking with that boyfriend of yours? Well, you had to experience what it was like, right?
Right.
If it was good, if it was bad, you have to experience it yourself. So in one scenario, as crazy as that whole wife scenario may have been hell, it may have been part of, okay, here's part of your gift. You were considering this, you wanted to do this, or maybe you just wanted to know what the hell would happen if something happened. Go for it. Different than me telling my son, don't touch the fire. I touched that fire.
Right.
I lived out everything,
Experienced.
every scenario that might happen. And to me, that's better than telling the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
You basically lived out more experiences than anybody else, and you learn from more mistakes. Yeah.
Like so much you described in those, like the amount of time you were out. So like the space-time continuum that you were experiencing obviously is different than our space-time continuum in this dimension. So like when you came back, like I just wondered the memory transfer wise, like all that year,
Yeah.
hundreds of years of memory, did that come back with
So-
you?
Oh, yeah. It was in a weird way. So I woke up. So when they extubated me, by the way, I woke up on my birthday,
Oh wow.
which is even more kind of insane, right?
Insane, yeah.
When they
It's the second birth.
when they extubated me and I woke up, something really crazy happened. They've never seen it before. I woke up and I beat the crap out of the nurse.
Oh.
It was
really?
it was a
Like-
guy, thankfully, by the way. But I woke up and there was this massive adrenaline surge, and they said it was a combination of fear and shock,
Okay.
right? Because at this point, my body had lost 50 pounds. I was completely weak. I was incapable of walking. But somehow, some way, I jumped up, ripped off my gown, ripped off all the tubes in me, and I started pounding on this nurse,
Wow.
right? To the point where they actually had to stab me with Ativan to put me back down, and I woke up in restraints.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Like full restraints. But to your question, right? That whole time frame, could have lasted 5 seconds or 5,000 years, right?
Right.
I've lived out portions of it in real time for decades. I've also lived flashes of it really quickly as well. So this is April 7th. I wake up and I do not sleep again for 3 days, 2.5 days, right? The night of April 9th, I will tell you the exact time, 2:27 a.m. I'm looking at my phone. I don't know what the hell just happened. My brain gets this massive hit and everything comes flooding back to me.
So how'd you know, like, you are in the real world, like actual dimension, or you were in one of your simulated lives?
I was told I was. I tried to
Right.
kind of connect dots, right? We also got to remember, I woke up in a different hospital that I went down in.
Right.
So no clue what the hell's going on.
So they moved you to a different
They
hospital.
moved me to hospital midway while I was in a coma because
Okay.
my wife was getting me on some medication.
Okay.
But I woke up and acknowledging what had just happened is the most frightening thing in the world because you just have no clue what just happened. So exactly to your point, at what point did that reality end and this reality start up again? So, it took me, honestly, about a month to kind of piece things back together. Right? About a month to piece things back together. 'Cause
You recalled everything in like few days, basically.
everything
after waking
everything
up.
from my experience on the other side over there came back to me in a second.
In a second. Okay.
That night, when it came back, I took out my phone, which by the way, they should never give a patient their phone that early after being revived after that
Right.
experience because I was doing some crazy shit on there. Sorry. But I remember I wrote about 30 pages that night of just notes,
Oh, wow.
writing down everything. Because at some point, you just expected all of the memory to disappear like a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
do you feel like a lot of it disappeared already? Or?
No.
No?
Unbelievably, everything is as clear as day as when it happened. Now I've written a
Did you
lot
go
of
back
this
to your
down.
note and read it?
I read it all the time, and I write more nonstop. And even as I tell stories, more stories come back to my memory.
Wow.
Some stories I've forgotten.
Have you ever gone to like a hypnotist to see like what they can find from?
No, I don't want to go down that path. God knows what they'll uncover after I've been to hell. Let's leave that there for the meantime.
So
right?
how did you escape hell, I guess?
Oh, how did I escape hell? So, it's funny. I remember the worst part of hell, the darkest day of hell. So some bad stuff had just happened to me. I won't get too graphic. It was really bad. But I remember the feeling was the worst part. And I remember something physical was happening to me and all the other stuff I was talking about. And while something bad was happening to me, somebody walked in the room and didn't even acknowledge what was going on. And they just continued on torturing me as if it was just there, right? It was just part of the day. And I remember the real torture there was the acceptance. And I remember it was roughly about 40 years in, right? I started accepting that, okay, this is it. This is it. This is the rest of my everything, right? And I remember breaking down after that, all that stuff happened. And I just like soaked it all in. And I just started breaking down nonstop, crying, whatever, screaming, whatever I could do, because it was just acceptance. And that's when the first part of the escape started. And then when I say escape, that's when the first piece of hope came about, right? I literally heard in what I believe was God talking to me, right? And God basically said the littlest, tiniest thing, and all he said was, Paulo, I'm still here. And not like some booming, thunderous voice from the clouds. It was actually the slightest whisper, right? And you know what? That little bit of like just knowing that you weren't abandoned was so much hope, right? And that was the best word I could think of. It was just hope. And when I realized that hope didn't just give me hope in the nature that, okay, you're not alone, but that hope that it didn't have to be this way. That was the torture that they were trying to give me. They were trying to entrap me in my own brain. And when I accepted the fact, it made it worse. And then when I finally heard it and heard him say, some sort of hope, that torture didn't happen anymore. Right?
If I ask you what has changed for Paulo before going to Coma, then Paulo after coming from Coma, what has changed in you? What are the changes that you actually saw within yourself? And you think that, these are the things actually it would never change if I didn't go there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll add a little bit to his question. Like, I know, like, you were not that religious.
Yeah.
So, just like, most of the business world, like, we're working, we're busy. Most of us believe in a higher power, but we don't have time or are focused on a day-to-day to kind of practice whatever faith you're in. So, being someone who is not religious, passing away, finding all this stuff, right? And then...
I got religious real fast. Let's
so
put it that way.
I just wanted to add that to his question, like knowing you. So go ahead.
I got religious real fast. First of all, let's just be clear. I was Catholic prior. Not that I was a terrible human being, but life happens.
Yeah,
right.
You weren't practicing basically.
You practiced,
right?
Right. Christmas, Easter Christian sometimes, right? But you got better at it, and when you finally hear God talking to you, okay, then you kind of accept the fact that there is something bigger than you, right? And then you finally talk to the guy, and you're like, okay, now there's no question about it, right? So what changed in me is everything.
By the characteristics perspective I'm talking about.
Well, perspective is everything, because perspective is what you want to know is about life perspective, right? I believe that everybody in this world is religious or suffering or in pain mentally, and I'm not talking about the people that are actually with diseases, but are suffering or struggling inside because we're all dedicated to our own urges, right? Like, we want to be successful. We want to accomplish as much as possible in this life. We want to make sure we have generational wealth. We want to make sure we have something that passed down. We want to make sure we take care of our employees, our families. All this stuff is so important. And then something like that happens, right? And when we talk about why we do certain things, because we think there's a time limit to accomplish these goals, right? I think one of the greatest things that came out of my experience is that I genuinely think that our time limit on Earth is such a small fraction of our actual time that why does it matter?
Right.
So, do you remember the last time you stubbed your toe? Or banged your knee against something? Or some really sharp pain that happened to you? No, you never been hurt before?
I did, but
What happened?
a couple of years ago.
Did you fall off something? You break an ankle?
I
What
just,
happened?
just hit my toe
Yeah.
maybe with something.
Did it hurt like hell?
It hurt.
It hurt. Okay. Do you remember? It took you a while to remember that.
Right.
You know why?
Because
Because in a fraction of the years you've been alive, that was a small little section of it
Right.
all. Right? Most of our suffering is because suffering is a proportion of time. If that happened and it hurt for 2 minutes, and your
Right.
lifespan was 2 minutes, you suffered for 100% of your life. Right?
Right.
As your life gets longer and longer, that percentage shrinks down more and more. Right? What if there was no time limit to our existence? That's what I got out of it more than anything else. Because nothing, no pain, no suffering, no loss of a client, right?
Right.
None of that stuff matters in the longer term. We're only concerned about it now because we're bound by the success time limit that we have, and most of that is self-imposed or society imposed, right? We
Right.
think we have to get it done. Before I turn 25, before I turn 40, I got to be a billionaire. Before I turn this, I got to have my Mercedes-Benz and my BMW. Before I turn this, before I die, I want to make sure my kids are okay.
In fact, when you thought you died, you were still thinking about those
Right.
things. You were like, okay, I want to see my grandchildren, how they are doing, you know?
right, I was
So-
constrained
Right.
because I wanted
the
to
human
make sure
nature.
the human factor of it was constrained by time. When you learned, well, when I learned and know for a fact, at least to myself, that life does not stop here.
Right.
That time limit is extended forever. So that 2 minutes of pain on your toe, that percentage of it shrinks more and more, and technically infinitely, to the point where it never really matters, right?
Right.
It never matters. So a lot of what I think happened to me is, I could shrug off bad things or problems very easily. Very, very easily. None of that stuff is going to matter in the long run, right? These pains and things that we think are such big deals, and we scream at people over it, we cry over it, we get concerned about it.
None of these matter.
After 1,000 years or so, you're just not going to care. And if you truly believe that there's something beyond this world, why are we so concerned about the little things in this world?
Right.
Right? Let's solve bigger problems. Right?
That makes total sense. Any question from your side, George?
No, I think totally agree with what you're saying. Is Paulo, is you got to be content in the moment you're on. Like this was one of my this was part of my Thanksgiving message to the company and the clients is be happy where you are at the moment with what you have, because like you said, in the grand scheme of things, whatever we didn't accomplish or we need to be at certain point, those things are not important in the grand scheme of things. You got to be content where you are, and then eventually you're going to get to a higher goal.
Yep.
But if you are always worried that I'm not achieving this or I have to be there or be anxious, then you're killing the time that you could have used being content and doing positive, proactive things, because our brain shuts down when we have emotions like worry and anxiety and those things.
Right.
Well, you also think about things like, what are your goals, right? I'm a big fan of missions and visions, right? A vision is where you want to be. A mission are the things you do to
Right.
accomplish that vision, right?
Exactly.
So if our vision is to be a billionaire, congratulations, right? You're going to get there, and then what?
Exactly.
Then what?
And then what, right? So it's kind of funny because every single successful person, by my definition, successful person that I know believes in a higher power. Whether
Yep.
it be God, Allah, Buddha, I can care less. They believe in a higher power, right?
Yep.
Mainly because they believe that they're working. They're doing everything they're doing for something bigger than themselves. And I've always thought it, right? And I think the difference now is that now I know it, right?
Right.
You could ask any religious person in any religion. You could ask the priest, the rabbis, anybody. I can guarantee you every single one of those people have a shred of doubt about what they believe in,
Yeah.
right? To this day, they're going to have a fraction of doubt, this much or this much. All varies in what's happening that day, I'm sure,
Right.
right? in my experience, I talk to God, right? Like I saw the guy face to face, right?
Yeah.
I've seen hell,
Right.
right? And I'll talk about heaven as well if you want, but I've seen hell. I've been to heaven.
Did you?
right?
Were you shown the heaven also?
Oh yeah, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, but I've been to these places, right? And I can't tell you anymore that there's doubt in my brain that there's more to this life.
Which we call afterlife.
Right,
basically.
but bringing the idea that you're no longer concerned about the if there is, and you know there is. By the way, whether it's heaven or hell, doesn't really matter, right? Whether you're going to go to the good place or the bad place or anywhere in between, right? Most of us just want to know there's something more.
Right.
Is there more? Did my father who passed away, did my mother, my grandmother who passed away, are they somewhere else? Am I going to see them again? Am I not going to see them again? Am I going to just turn into dirt and worms one day, right? Everybody just wants to know, is there more? What that happens, I don't even know what happened to me, right? All I can tell you right now is that there's definitely more, right? That's all there is. Oh.
For our audience, can you just briefly talk to us about the heaven side of things? What you saw?
Sure. Heaven is simple. Heaven is simple. So, George, I'm going to play a game with you because I know you relate to this really easily. I want you to think 5 people. Actually, no, forget 5 people. Give me 3 people you would want in heaven with you. Okay? You got it in your head. Okay. Don't say their names. All right. Now, I want you to think about each individual. Would they say the same 3 people? Right? Now, you're probably saying your children and everything else. Now, imagine your children were your age.
Mm-hmm.
Would they still say the same 3 people?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, here's the paradox of where the heavens get complicated. Right. You have your heaven, and you want these 3 people. Do they want you in their heaven?
Right.
Right. So let's start working that possibility down. So I'm assuming you said one of the people you probably want to see is your child, is
Sure.
your daughter. Of course.
Yeah.
Right. But what if I told you, factually, you didn't have to question it for 1 second, that she had her own heaven, with her own 3 people in it, right? Okay. Would you be content with that answer? No questions asked. No debate about it. You knew for a fact that she had her own heaven. Would you be happy about that?
Sure.
Would you need to see her again, knowing that you were sure she's happy?
Probably FaceTime her.
No. But knowing for a fact that she was happy.
Yeah.
Would you need to see her again, or would you be content with the knowledge that, okay, I'm happy that she's happy?
It's hard to say, right? I
Right.
mean, most people probably would want some
Would you probably want to?
see.
Right.
Right.
Right. You'd want to.
Like visit, see them, whatever.
Right. Okay. So this is where heaven gets complicated. Right. If you start putting those 3 people and their 3 people and their 3 people, there's no chance that those 3 people and his 3 people and your 3 people want to see each other.
Right.
On this earth, there was only one person that I chose that chose me back, and it was just my wife. So when I got to heaven, there's only 2 people there, me and my wife, and then God everywhere else. That was it. And there was no wondering, oh, are our kids okay? No, none of that.
But how did you transition from hell to heaven?
Oh, that's like a 40-hour story. I don't think you have enough recording time on your cameras to do
But
this.
give us like a 1-minute version.
Let's just say my wife got me out of hell.
Huh.
So right, she had already passed away, and she made sure I got out of hell.
Interesting.
All right.
She went to heaven, and then she probably asked for you. And then
So similar. By the way, I'm Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Similar to the Muslim faiths and other stories. There in my hell experience and heaven experience, there were levels of heaven.
Yes, for sure.
Right. So my first moments in that weird hospital room was level 1. Okay. Level 2 I had stepped into, and I couldn't get to level 3 until my wife came with me.
Right. Okay.
Nor could she go without me, because it wouldn't be heaven without either one of us. Hence the paradox of it all.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Makes
that was heaven. So in my heaven there were 3. I know some religions have 7, right?
Yes.
And some other religions have like 5,000. But really cool story. So there is a sect of Japanese Buddhism, which is really cool. Right? So they believe in 1,000 iterations of your life, reincarnations until you hit the ultimate nirvana.
Oh, wow.
Right? 1,000. And in this sect, they believe that Buddha did it.
Oh, wow.
He went through 1,000 lifetimes, and he finally got to the top one. And you know who was there when he got there?
Who?
Absolutely nobody. Not because nobody did it, but because could it be heaven or nirvana if you knew there were other people not there as well? Not just people you loved. If you knew people were suffering below you,
Mm-hmm.
how could that be heaven?
Right.
If you knew, and so I'm going to get gruesome with you for a second. If you knew your wife was not in heaven with you,
Right.
how could it be heaven?
Right.
How would that make sense at all?
Right. No.
Right?
Right.
So that was heaven, right?
Mm.
Heaven was just simple,
Mm.
right? And by the way, I'll give you the emotion of heaven. People think some grand, extra, amazing feeling. Let's just say it was okay, right?
Mm.
Everything was just okay, right? And it's a feeling I can't really purely explain, because if you're always, if you keep saying heaven's great, it means you have to have a low to compare it to,
Right.
right? You can't have an up without a down, right? But everything was just good.
Good. Everything
Okay.
is good.
It's just okay.
You have nothing to compare it with, basically.
I do not have the words now that I'm back here to explain some of the emotions and feelings that I had while I was there.
So, but-
And not to knock on you, you're not smart enough to understand, nor do I have the intelligence right now to explain it,
right.
because it's emotions and feelings and sensations that have never been experienced on this earth. So there's nothing I can even compare it to.
But when you experienced that heaven feeling,
Mm-hmm.
did you remember the feeling that you had when you were in hell, or you
Oh, yeah.
already forgot everything when you were in the heaven?
No, you remembered everything.
You remembered everything. You
Yeah.
you knew all the experiences that you
Yeah.
had before coming to heaven.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because all those experiences is what makes you you. Now, if you look at the religious, from a religious standpoint, right, some people will call it purification what I went through, right? Some
Mhm.
people would just say it's, you're
you forget everything.
you're in
basically, that's something.
purgatory. No, they basically beat the pain out of you, right?
Right.
Or they put you through some purgatory stage where you're in some kind of limbo, whatever
Mhm.
else, etc. Every religion has a different word for it,
Yeah.
right? But it's all the same feeling, same concept.
Right.
Right. There's a period of time where you are waiting to move up, and you still got to work your way up. But if I can leave you with a really cool concept, the fact that when you die here, it's not done. You're not done working to move up, because the levels of heaven make it fun, right?
Yeah.
You're just at level 1. You still got to go to level 2 or 3 or 1,000, however many there are for you guys, right? For whatever happens. But you still got to keep working, which is kind of cool, because that means that your life here, what you do here, isn't the end all be all
Mhm.
to your final destinations.
Interesting. And I'll ask one
Yeah.
question, which a lot of people are probably wondering. So you had these experiences, right? You came back, right? How, like, what is there any type of something that would give a confirmation to yourself, like, okay, you are really experiencing those? These are not some random things your brain is making up.
It's funny. I told this story. I still remember that part about the guy telling me about heaven and hell and explaining I'm going to go to hell first. I told it to an atheist.
Mhm.
And he goes, it's really funny how your brain basically explained it to you in a way that you would understand because you were explaining it to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a very atheist answer, right?
Right.
And to me, I'm like, no, I think it was explained to me the way I needed it to be told by somebody else, right? Right. So because it's the way I need to experience it. I can explain the same thing to you 10 times. Let's think about Salesforce. I could explain Salesforce to 10 different students, 10 different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the only way those individuals understand it.
Yeah.
If you teach a class and just say, here's it is, everyone's going to have to digest that very differently,
Right.
right?
Mhm. Right.
It's just the way people think and process stuff. And I was told about it the way I had to be told about it, right? Now, an atheist, like I said, would say, well, your brain told you how you wanted to hear it. I'm like, no, I don't think so.
But
Right.
but was there something like, I've heard a lot of near-death experience where people, I saw what was happening in the next room. They were wearing this dress.
Oh, yeah.
And later on, that's actually what
I thought
they experienced.
I think the funniest part was
Yeah.
a year ago, last April, I went to give a presentation at one of the first hospitals I was at.
Mhm.
And in the room was a bunch of doctors and nurses who actually took care of me.
Oh, wow.
I told them where they were the night I died. If they were having dinner with their wife, what they were eating, what they were wearing, and they confirmed it. I would then I even took some of the nurses that took care of me out to dinner
Uh-huh.
a year or two later, and I drew on a paper where each one of them was standing that day.
So just to be clear, so everyone
Gotta be
understood
kidding
this.
me.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, when you in that your home base, what you described, when you were seeing on a screen where like a sand, and then
Yep.
you were in the room, you were seeing different doctors, what they were
Yep.
doing at home. you described the scene before. So a year earlier, you were at an event with those doctors and staff members, and you actually you asked them, and they confirmed.
I confirmed it. Yeah, I needed to know. To be honest with you,
And
I needed to know.
Was that on in a event or like how did you meet all these people?
Oh, so I was speaking at the foundation. I was giving a presentation about the foundation, talking about some of the stuff that I was doing for the hospital now.
Okay.
And how I was raising money for them, kind of thing. And then
and they were in that event.
They were in the event. Well, they were there to talk to me.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Got you.
And then later on, I had taken I think 3 of the nurses out that took care of me, and those guys really knew the full details of what happened because they were actually the hands-on.
What would be interesting is to bring a few of those people here
and
interview them.
Oh, no, so it's pretty funny. I've taken a lot of talked to a lot of the nurses, and actually, one of the first nurses who saw me had seen me as soon as they extubated me, and she saw me in the ICU in the recovery room.
Yeah,
and she says I had the craziest. Her words was craziest, murderous look in my eyes. And I told her afterwards, it wasn't your fault. I didn't know if I was still in hell or not. And that was when I initially woke up, the confusion of not knowing
what was
going on.
Yeah.
I was in this weird state of, okay, I need to get back to grounded to reality here and what's real, what's not.
Right.
And it took me a while. And she said I had this murderous look. So I'll tell you a quick story. You know how murderous I was? I tried to kill the nurses in the ER, in the ICU room, right? I actually, I
beat already one person.
So I already beaten one, right? So that put me out of it, and they put me in a 5-point restraint, which 4-point restraint, 5 points. So your feet are both strapped down, your arms are strapped down. There's a strap across your chest. In my brain, I would spend 2 months, which was really like a minute, escaping that setup. Never been done before. I escaped the restraints.
Oh wow!
Right? So that little call bell. But by the way, I escaped the restraints. My first instinct was to kill myself.
Oh wow!
Because I thought I can recycle back. I thought I was still in hell.
Oh, okay.
I thought if I kill myself, I'll get back to heaven. It was a weird.
Yeah,
thought
we are
process.
thinking, you're
I'm all over the
basically.
place. Yeah, I'm delusional, right? So, my first instinct is to pull out the main line out of my neck.
Ooh.
And I didn't even know what the hell the main line is, but there's a tube in my neck that goes right into my heart.
Oh wow!
And I pull it. I'm like, oh, this is really fun. And there's stitches. I yank it out. And if you ever realize, like, it's like a fountain, like sprays blood nonstop.
Shoot.
And then there was another.
Sprinkling all the blood.
Oh yeah, there's another tube in my thigh. I pulled that out too. Let's go for it. Let's go for it. And then some other gruesome tubes I'll also pull out. I won't explain the details, but they also pull them all out.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I'm literally trying to bleed out at this point. Okay. So the nurse is screaming at me from the door. They finally get dressed up. They come in. She puts her elbow in my chest. Ativan, knock me out. Wake up in restraints again. I escape them again. Here's the fun part when I try to kill the nurse. I escape somehow in secret, trying not to show anybody. That stupid little call.
Didn't they bring your wife in to kind of calm you down?
It's COVID. That's the problem.
COVID time.
This is COVID. This is why all the rules were changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody around at all. That little call, little speaker thing where you control the TV and stuff and call the nurse. I dismantled it with my thumbnails. I'm unscrewing it, right? I have 2 instincts here. One, to electrocute the nurse with the wiring.
So we're doing MacGyvering, huh?
Right. I actually I strip the wires with my teeth.
Shit.
Right.
Wow.
At the same time, I take a piece of the green chip that was inside, and I'm actually starting to make a prison shank out of it.
Because in your head, you were thinking that you were in hell that time, right? You were trying to escape.
I was trying to escape.
At what point did you realize, no, this is actually Earth? You're back in the...
So I was fully delusional for about 24 hours. And then I finally got my phone. And they let me FaceTime my wife. One word out of her mouth, it all came back to reality. It just came crashing back. Now, I'm not going to lie, for a few weeks later on, I'm still kind of...
Deluded.
In and out, maybe, maybe not. But for the most part, it all kind of, okay, I'm back, I'm alive. Right? Yeah, that was coming back to reality.
Awesome.
Pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
Did you see George there?
I did. Actually, the demon was George. I'm just kidding. George was in hell. He was my torturer. It was fine.
You didn't try to save him, right? You just, rot in hell.
No. He's like, we're good. No, but I'll tell you a quick story about hell.
I was probably telling him, you better sell more deals for us.
Yeah. So I will tell you, one of the reasons why I always tell people, I'm not sure I'm going back to heaven, right, was because there was this elderly African American gentleman in the room next to me in hell. Just think about that, right? I don't know. And they were torturing the crap out of him. I'm not going to get, that was really bad stuff they were doing. But I don't know if he's been there for 1 year or 1 million years, right? I don't know, right? Maybe he didn't find that sprinkling of hope that I did.
Mm-hmm.
If, like I asked you before, if there was a loved one that you knew was there, would you go back to get him? Right? Would you sacrifice your eternity for somebody else's to get them out? Because it wouldn't be eternity for you in any kind of happiness, knowing, not thinking, knowing that somebody there.
Now, do you know that person in real life?
No clue. But in my experience, he was right next to me for years. Right? What if I'm supposed to go back and just give him a glimmer of hope?
Or don't even think of going back to
No.
again.
But I, in all honesty, I couldn't imagine heaven knowing there was somebody like that.
Well, that's what God is there for, right? God will give him hope.
Yeah.
Just like God did give it to you.
Right. But think about all the pieces of hope that was given to me. Right?
Yeah.
I was able to have my experience, my wife and my kids and everything else, and watch them live their lives out and all that kind of stuff, and all that, and all the happiness that they had, and it was those moments, and the knowledge that there's people in these scenarios. It's really hard to know that, to move forward with knowing that.
Maybe they are just going through their cycle and getting cleansed.
Maybe. I would hope so.
Maybe.
And I would hope that they knew there was a way out.
Yeah.
Right? You just hope there was a way out. And I think that's what most people don't acknowledge is that, what if the timeline was infinite and not really a line at all? And two, what if, you didn't have to have an eternity in one place and you could move forward?
That's really, something that I'm like, so many things going inside my head right now. I don't know where to start with, but any closing statement, Paulo, you want to give to our audience so that from your experience, basically, obviously. So if you can just give some closing statement, we are almost there. That would be really great.
I think one of the biggest statement I give. So let me just. It's gonna be a long closing statement, by the way, because I get really nerdy here. So let's go back to George's comment. You originally talked about quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Right. So quantum mechanics is a fascinating study, right? They talk about subatomic particles and how those affect other things. And one of the biggest challenges with the quantum mechanics is the connection between that and relativity. Right. Yep. Relativity is specifically about time distortion. Right. Because in quantum mechanics, time is linear, right? Time is in linear control. Relativity says that it could be slowed down or changed based on a SpaceTime Continuum concept, an Einstein concept pretty much, right? And they've been trying to bridge the gap between those two. And once they find that bridge, by the way, you would have technically solved a lot of things, right? A lot of things. And they've come up with string theory to try to figure those things out, all that kind of stuff, etc. And by the way, that's the reason a lot of these things are theories, because you can't bridge those two theories, right? But I think that one of the biggest things I came out with in all of this is the idea and the concept that the stub toe, whether it be a stub toe, cancer for a decade, COVID for a few weeks in a coma, right? A bad business deal, losing all your money, failing a grade, losing a loved one, etc. If you truly believe that there's a lot more to this life than this life, all of that is still just a stub toe, right? All of that is still just a stub toe in time. And you'll remember it just as easily as you forgot it, right? And you got to think about that moment because it was so long ago. And there's just so much more to happen still. And I think, if we could just look at everything we're doing from a life standpoint, from a business standpoint, and give it some real perspective. Right. Time is not our enemy, right? We're only using it as our enemy because we're constraining ourselves and giving ourselves rules. Put that aside, you have endless limitations as a person.
True that. Yeah. Anything from your side, George, to our audience?
So I know this is something different than what we normally talk about, right? And we're here to solve business problems, and we're talking about things that are of great beyond. But hopefully, this episode was somewhat helpful for everyone, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we go through this, and life is not just the material part. That's just byproduct of our existence, right? Understanding a deeper meaning of life as science catches up with what generational knowledge from past generations we have already known. Science is almost there. Quantum mechanics is already saying human consciousness is, matter acts like a matter when human consciousness observes it. So it doesn't get any better than that. So I'm glad we're alive at a time where science is catching up and we're able to kind of almost scientifically see there's a bigger meaning to life than every day. So hopefully this was helpful and adds more meaning to all of our lives. And yeah, one last reminder is we are the best in solving business problems. So sign up with us.
There you go.
That is
Thank
a
you,
good
guys.
pitch right there.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. I hope this podcast was kind of different. Like I said, our every podcast will be different, one from each. We always talk about business, technology, and stuff like that. But today's podcast was kind of personal, kind of different. We are not going to tell you to believe it or not to believe it. It's up to you. Just, listen to it and see if you can get anything out of it. If you can implement anything out of this podcast, that would be really great. And obviously, like George mentioned, we are best for solving business, and we're also here for developing your business. So, Micronetbd, this is the end of our podcast. See you soon on next one. Thank you.